I've been with Gem Wealth for about 11 years now, and I always think about the fact that when I started here, I actually didn't have a clue what financial advisors do, or at least what I thought they did was very different than what I found when I joined this team. So we're going to be talking about misconceptions that many people have about financial advisors and what they do. And I brought Chad Roller to be on the show today. He's my partner out in Conway because he also has a pretty long history working with financial advisors. So I thought he could bring some light to this conversation as well, as we talk about misconceptions about financial advice. And we're going to dive right into the first one, which is that advisors are for the ultra wealthy. I don't know if you've experienced this with clients coming in and saying that they don't even know if they have enough to work with us, but that's been our experience together at least.
Yeah, I would say that would be the first misconception about utilizing an advisor as a resource. And so ultra wealthy can be defined. That's
a lot of different ways.
Exactly. That's your perspective. But ultimately, you've got to realize that no matter where you're at in your journey, there is some things that you need to reach out and have resources for, right? Mm-hmm. So you can almost look at it like if you are just renting a house versus building a house, you still may need a plumber, right? Mm-hmm. Because even in a rental property, you may have an issue with a sink or a faucet or something like that. That's not, something you could probably fix by going to Home Depot and doing it yourself. But it's not like building a house and starting from the ground up and needing a plumber for a complete job, right?
Right.
So there's all different levels of times that you may need a plumber. And so the same thing goes for an advisor. There may not be a whole lot of need for an advisor in the beginning to really interact on a daily or monthly or quarterly basis, but there are some things that an advisor can do for you when you're starting out to kind of start you down the right path in trying to reach that ultimate goal of where you feel like you are the ultra wealthy.
Yeah, and I think, if you're thinking to yourself, well, this is only for the ultra wealthy. If that's one of those misconceptions that you've been believing, ask yourself, do you feel like people who want to get fit shouldn't use a trainer because they're not ultra fit yet? It's, you're going to get further with some coaching than you likely would on your own. So don't feel like you have to arrive before you can get that assistance. So, the truth is that the financial advisor can be helpful throughout, like you said, the journey. There's, the big part of what we do isn't even related to we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but to the actual investing. A big part of what we do, especially earlier in people's journeys, is education and behavior management.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of times, like you just said, with the personal trainer, you got to get started somewhere. And a lot of people walk in the gym on the first day and say, I know I need to do this, but I have no clue where to get started. So just engaging with a financial advisor, a lot of times utilizing that experience can kind of help you get off that square one to kind of create maybe those steps to get started in the right path.
And another thing related to that, I started using a personal trainer last year for a period of time. What I found was I thought I knew what I needed to do, but there were exercises that I could do a different way to be more efficient. So that's another thing that I feel like an advisor, especially earlier in your journey, can help you with, is they can help you avoid some of those inefficient ways to reach your goals and maybe get you on that road a little bit faster. So that's misconception number one, that advisors are for the ultra wealthy. And the second one I have to own was one that I believed. I thought financial advisors were stockbrokers. You see on TV when someone's a financial advisor, they're the stock pickers and they have to be like these like gurus of some sort. But that is not the case. I mean, if you want to pick stocks, you can get an E-Trade account and do that a lot cheaper. But that's not really what we do.
Yeah, that is one that we try to be very upfront with clients about. When you take a look at daily trading and basically the volume of trading and the world that we live in, the technology world we live in, trading happens so fast, mm-hmm. right? So we're all have the same amount of information available to us that a lot of back, quote, when there used to be just, quote, stockbrokers, they were receiving a lot of that information prior to the public, right? Mm-hmm. Because they had the researchers and they had the research department. But now with the technology we have and the high frequency trading, all of that is just so fast.
Yeah.
So your ability to stay ahead and receive information, process that information, and trade on that information has really changed the role of the financial advisors to where we are just basically advisors and the RIA side to where we're managing portfolios, right? Instead of day in and day out actually trading individual stocks.
And the research tells us when you try to time the market, when you're trying to catch things low, buy low, sell high, and you try to do that consistently over time, you're actually going to get less return on average than you would if you just stayed the course in a well-diversified portfolio. So it's not about, having someone who can find this magical investment that nobody else knows about. It just doesn't exist. But what financial advisors do is use their knowledge and expertise of the overall cycles of the market and overall kind of trajectory of the market to build financial plans so that those can assist you in executing that, as opposed to trying to constantly be looking for the next great thing, really having a plan that doesn't require you to have to chase like that.
Yeah, and I think there are fewer stocks on the exchange now. I think there's somewhere around 5,500 or something like that, individual stocks, and it has come down over the past, but that's still a lot of information for an advisor to keep up with on a day-to-day basis. So the information out there has changed, the availability of it, and that has also created with the platforms like you talked about, E-Trade and some of those platforms. The individual retail investor has the ability to trade those stocks way more efficiently on a cost basis than utilizing a financial advisor just because of the pure cost of business.
Yeah, and when you say, well, okay, we're not just stockbrokers, what else do we do? I would say the bulk of our practice, the bulk of what we do to assist clients has to do with helping them create budgets, help them create savings plans, make sure they have the right insurance coverage, looking at tax strategies to make sure they're being efficient there, and estate planning, making sure that they have all their gaps filled so that it's not just about having to have the right stock, but rather having a broad protected plan as much as possible so that they're successful long term.
Yeah, and I think that plays into myth number 3, and that financial advisors cost too much. And so, yes, there is a cost to being running a financial advice business, or whatever, a brokerage as we call it. And there are fees. There's fees that we charge for advice, for asset management, and for planning, right? But when you stop and you look at just what you went over, everything from the planning process to discussing beneficiaries, discussing estate planning, rebalancing portfolios, there is a lot of built in to those fee structures.
Yeah, and I think it does vary greatly from advisor to advisor. There are some ranges that people can work in our industry, but you're not just paying for the stock picks, as we talked about before. The value that our clients are receiving, in our opinion, does outweigh the cost that we charge, because we're talking about planning. And, one thing I have found a lot of times is when we meet with a client to plan, often they don't really know what they need. They haven't had somebody ask them what they need. When we talk about insurance, in 2020, the cost of a house went up drastically. The cost to build a house went up drastically. Did your advisor talk to you about making sure that your homeowner's policy was revisited so that you have the coverage to replace your home if something were to happen now that it's highly appreciated? Those are areas that we're covering with our clients and making sure they don't have those gaps. I talk to clients about life insurance, and often people say, well, I've got enough to cover my debt. But you and I both know that's not enough.
Right. Yeah, and that life insurance a lot of times gets sold independently from the overall plan. So that's where a financial advisor can come from a planning aspect instead of just a sales aspect to really make sure that, okay, why do you have what you have? And we've talked to many clients that do not understand life insurance, and that's just kind of one area. But also, there's a ton of information out there now, whether you go through any platform and you're just getting bombarded with information and different, we'll have clients call us about something that they may have seen on TikTok, right? And this is the way you pay down your mortgage, or this is the way that, you attack credit card debt, or can I use a HELOC and buy another home? There's all of those different things that they may have heard, but utilizing and having access to a financial advisor that says, okay, you understand my situation. How does that play into my situation? And is that something that I should be looking into? So just being that resource to say, okay, having the ability to ask questions and looking at it from a third-party standpoint can be very beneficial to you instead of just kind of going along with something maybe you have read on your own.
Yes, I think they call them finfluencers, by the way, in case you haven't heard that word.
Heard that
Yes, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of data, but what we lack online is wisdom. And that's what you're talking about when it comes to understanding whether that data applies to your journey. Because if the data, not every piece of advice is good for you. If someone were to say, oh, well, if you want to lose weight, you should go run 3 miles a day, that might work for someone with better knees than mine, but my knees are shot from volleyball. So I can't go out and just do that. It would not be the best plan for me, and I would get demotivated and stop that journey pretty quickly. So making sure that you have somebody to help you filter that information is very beneficial, and that's one of the roles that your financial advisor should be playing for you. Another role is really the behavioral coaching side, because there's a lot of shiny things out there.
There is, and we have been through this over the last, year and a half, and we've seen this shift in a lot of assets to CDs, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a behavioral. We saw CD rates get up over 5%, so we had a lot of clients shifting to those CD rates and obtaining that interest. And now, once you've seen the market give, 20+% return, now all of a sudden that behavioral is, the fear of missing out, right?
Yes.
And so they want to transition and now put risk on that money that maybe they don't need to take. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of that behavioral coaching when it comes to chasing returns, getting in and out of the market, timing, those type of things. But that is a very reactive way of planning versus a very proactive way of planning and how we do so. So yes, our daily behavioral coaching is probably something that we exercise every day.
And I think another example was in 2022. There were a lot of clients who, when both sides of the market was struggling, we had our equity side struggling and our bond side struggling, which is abnormal, there was this inclination to panic, to go, oh my goodness, here it comes, bottom's falling out, my 401k is now a 201k, those sorts of things. We would hear those and we would encourage our people, just leave it alone. Just pause and breathe. In the case of our income providers, we had assets set aside. It wasn't really affecting their income. But in our younger clients, even, we saw them starting to panic a little bit, and we encouraged them to stay the course and remember their purpose. And in those cases, the market had recovered by the next year, and we're up at the point of this recording, 30% at the moment this year. So, the market has these cycles, and being able to just breathe and remember the goals that you were chasing, that's what the plan does, is it gives you your why. So just like you chose the vehicle you have for the features that it offers, the advisor that you have should have features that they're offering to you that offset those costs to make them worth it. If you feel like it's not happening, then it's time to have a conversation with them. Maybe you need to clarify what your needs are a little more, or maybe you need a different advisor in your life. But let's talk about some times when you definitely need an advisor in your life, because there are some times where you and I would say, okay, at this point, you need somebody in your life.
Yeah, I would say job change.
Mm-hmm.
If you're changing jobs and you are making a change in income, you've got an old employer plan, I'd say that is a very good time to engage with an advisor to make sure that, okay, number one, those old employer plans do not get kind of orphaned out
Mm-hmm.
there, forgotten about, and you still have the management to incorporate it with your overall plan. And then also, how are you going to utilize your income increase or decrease, if it may be, moving forward? So I think job change is a big time to engage with an advisor.
Yes, and another thing they can do is help you really understand the new plan, because I think often you get a little document or a packet and you have to turn it in within 3 days, but you don't really necessarily know what you're signing up for. So a lot of times that can be helpful. Another time I would say is life changes, loss of a family member, gaining a family member, marriage, if you've got an inheritance coming. Those are all triggers that you're at a kind of a crossroads in your financial journey, and you may want to engage with somebody to talk about what goals you need to pursue or what pitfalls to avoid in that transition. Any others for you, Chad?
No, I think the marriage is a big thing, because now you're bringing in two backgrounds, mm-hmm. and you're collaborating into a household, and so being on the same page moving forward is a big.
Yeah. All right, so it's time for our 2 cents. This is kind of our final thoughts for the show. And Chad, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think number one, everyone needs to engage with an advisor. in some form or fashion. So it's not just for the ultra wealthy, and understand that there's a lot of services just past asset management that you can engage with an advisor for.
Got it. And if that's something that interests you, if you've been saying, man, I some of this resonates with me, and you would like to engage with a Gem Wealth advisor, you can reach out to our team by emailing info@getreadyforthefuture.com. Again, that's info@getreadyforthefuture.com to request an appointment with a Gem Wealth advisor today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The Gem Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Gem Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.